and welcome back to Empowering from Within. Thank you for being here. Today, we're going to talk about a very, very sensitive topic. We're going to talk about loss and how to process it through a spiritual, energetic lens. And some of the things that have given me great comfort and great compassion and understanding for myself when I'm in that very painful emotion of loss and grief and sadness. And I think loss is truly one of the most painful emotional experiences that we can have. And when we start to see it in a different context, it can help to alleviate some of that very, very deep suffering that we go through as humans when we lose a loved one or a relationship or a job or whatever it might be. So, when I was 18, I lost both my legs below the knee, my left hand, and much of my sight. And I woke up in hospital and I had no muscles, no hair, and all my limbs were bandaged and aching at every end. And I was in such a profound amount of shock. And after the shock kind of landed, then I had a very, very, very deep feeling of grief. And it felt like my friends, my studies, my whole life had just been ripped away from me. And it was later in life that I learned the mathematical definition of loss is the word itself quantifies the difference between expected outcome and actual outcome. And it just helped me to gain this deeper understanding of my emotions because if our emotions are spinning and we never complete the cycle on them and we never actually have words for them and articulate them and link like how we feel in our body to our brain, they can never let go because we never actually hit the nail on the head. And we might be trying to shift the fact that we feel afraid or off or misunderstood or whatever it might be until we actually give our body and our mind the words for how we feel we can't sort of unhook from the emotional experience. And so understanding that I had zero expectation that I would lose my limbs and suffer such an intense illness when I was 18 and that I had expected that I would go through university as a healthy, fully limbed, fully abled person. But the actual outcome was much, much different to that. And the gap between the expected outcome and the actual outcome was so big for me to process, gave me such a deeper insight into how I was feeling and really helped me to let go of a lot of the shock and feeling of being blindsided. And I think a lot more compassion for how I was processing what had occurred. And another key articulation of loss that was really helpful for me was understanding that the deeper the attachment to what was lost, the more profound the pain will be. So if you lose a child or a loved one or a limb or a job that meant everything to you, then the pain of that loss is going to be more intense because obviously your attachment is so profound. And I think loss can be excruciatingly painful when we make the loss mean something about us. And often we can't move on from loss because there are unprocessed beliefs underneath. Things like we could have prevented it, it should never have happened. We compare ourselves to other people's life paths and we say we're unlucky or, this thing was not in the plan and we make it mean that we are a bad person, a bad parent, a bad daughter, whatever it might be that we are associating. And we'll be very particular to each person what we are making that loss mean about us. And once we can start to interrogate some of the beliefs underneath that painful experience of loss, we can start to let it go and see it in a clearer perspective. And in my spiritual understanding of life, I believe that we come into this earth realm with certain goals to grow and expand and learn and master certain things. And each soul has a plan and a contract to do certain things. And I believe, and it has helped me to feel much less victimized by my life, that my soul chose my experience of illness and loss as an 18-year-old. And before I came here, said, yes, sign me up for those parents and that illness and every big milestone in my life. And I signed up for it because of the expansion, the consciousness growth, the incredible lessons, the skills, the tools, the capabilities, the purpose, the meaning, the ability to teach other people, all of it. And understanding that that was a soul choice has given me much, much, much comfort instead of looking through it solely through a human lens where these random, horrendous, painful events occur with no purpose and no meaning. And if we look at our lives through the lens of growth and through the lens of spiritual growth, some of the things that happen to us can lose their deep emotional charge and we can see them in a much more neutral way. The other thing I would say about loss is that, as we know, we are all made of energy. Everything in the entire universe is made of energy, and energy cannot be created or destroyed. So, whatever is lost and where we feel we have that giant gaping hole in our life, it is scientifically, energetically impossible that that energy was destroyed forever. So, what that energy represented to you and what it meant to you, and the self-identity that it was giving you is now being held by other energetic pieces in your life. So, a low stakes example is when I went to boarding school in year eight and I felt like I lost my mum because she was no longer physically present in my day-to-day life for terms at a time. The energy that my mum held and the particular piece of the pie chart that she was holding in my life, for example, nurturance, guidance, care, love, all of that energy was now picked up by other people in my energetic field. So, boarding mistresses, friends, uh, teachers, coaches, day kids, mums. Shout out to my favorite mums from my day kid friends who I used to go out on boarders weekends with. They were now all holding that mothering energetic piece for me, and they picked up the energy that my mum relinquished because bless my parents' hearts, they wanted us to get the best education possible and relinquish some of that physical present caretaking during my high school years or secondary school years. So if you look around your life and think about what the loss that you've experienced meant to you, and you will see that it has been picked up and inhabited by other people, and other people are now holding that energy. And when we are out of the perspective of energy never being created or destroyed, then we experience this giant lack and this giant gaping hole. But if we see that this person meant, you know, love, safety, care, responsibility, whatever it is, you will see that other people are now holding that energy. And I've often seen that people who lose a child in a difficult circumstance go on to create a new mission in life where they try and prevent what happened to their child happening to other families. And so, where their child may have given them great meaning and purpose and love and responsibility, now that energy that the child was holding, who may have passed away, is held by possibly a million people that they are now caring for, responsible for, providing love and nurturance and meaning and purpose in their lives. The piece of the energy that their child was holding is now being inhabited by like a much more greater number of people. And the energy has been dispersed, but it has not, and transferred, but it has not been created or destroyed. Now, that is not to say that the person that is lost can ever be replaced. However, the other very, very powerful spiritual understanding that I have come to experience and learn about is that souls leave the earth realm when they have accomplished all the growth and all the lessons that they came here to experience. And they only tap out from the physical living experience of life when they no longer have the tools and capabilities and they no longer have any lessons left here on earth. And so when we feel as though someone left, quote unquote, early, it is actually because they have completed everything that they wanted to achieve in this life. And they may have only signed up for that amount of time to be here in the world. And they get to a point where they're like, I have completed everything I wanted to complete, and I no longer have the tools and skills and capabilities in my soul archives to continue on with this particular life. And I need to tap out, go back up to source, and create a new plan and a new life to continue my growth, which is, when you think about it, quite a beautiful thing. And it relieves the sense of guilt that we could have prevented this soul from leaving and we could have done more or something extra or whatever it was to extend the length of their life, because it is, in my opinion, spiritually and energetically factual that if a soul is no longer here, it means that they didn't have the tools or the lessons or the growth or any experiences left that they had in their plan. And it was their plan all along to only come in for that amount of time. And when we start wrangling with reality or another soul's plan, is when we get into this futile sense of frustration and powerlessness and helplessness. If we can have the courage and the strength to allow that soul's plan to be what it was, that is when we can diminish again some of this deep, deep, deep pain and suffering that we experience when we lose a loved one. Now, again, if you say you lost a job that meant something to you, you were attached to it for your sense of significance or purpose, well, that energy of that job will now be dispersed to another area of your life. Perhaps you become, with more time on your hands, you become extremely significant and have a deeper purpose in your home life or with your friends or whatever it might be. The energy will never be created or destroyed, and it will just simply be transferred to another area of your life. The other thing I want to say about losing loved ones is that when we are experiencing other people dying around us and a lot of loss around us, that is a reflection of our energy as well. And if you don't know about reflections, go back to previous podcasts. There will also be a webinar on my website shortly about reflections. But basically, in very condensed terms, a reflection is when we are triggered by something and it is a mirror trying to show us how we are feeling in another area of life. So it is simply like a reenactment of something that we are already feeling. And if we hear about a friend who lost their parent or someone who lost their pet, or we lose someone close to us, it is because that soul is also contracted to show us our reflection so that we can attend to the energy that is going down in another area of our life. Again, the 8 areas have been covered in another podcast, but it may be that we feel like we have had a giant loss in our finances, or something dramatic has happened at our work life or in our social circle, and we feel like it will be the death of us. And we are having these emotions of, this is going to end me. I actually can't cope with this. But reflections are simply perceptions. They are not reality, because if you could not cope with something in your life, you would not be here. If you are here, it means you have the tools and skills necessary to navigate whatever is happening in your life, and you have the growth available to you to rise to that challenge, whatever it might be, in financial or family or career, whatever dramatic thing has gone down. You are in the energy and the emotion of feeling like it will be the death of you. And this person passing away is a reflection of that, and an opportunity to see the energy that you have been soaking in and the perceptions that you have about another area of your life. And I would invite you to look back across your life and see what was happening in other areas of your life when you experienced the loss, and perhaps how you felt about that area was being played out through the grief and the emotions that the loss actually sparked in you. So it is a complex system of interacting energy fields that we are all in. But living a life according to energy and according to my soul and all these spiritual understandings and these higher frequency, higher consciousness understandings of life, and the fact that all of our souls are here to learn and grow and expand, through obstacle and challenge and feeling every emotion under the sun has given me so much comfort and so much context for some of the suffering and loss that I have been through in my own personal life. And I think if you are willing to embrace the growth and the spiritual lessons in your life, it does take the edge off because we are programmed as humans to see everything as good and bad and painful and excellent and these very polarizing emotions. And the truth is that everything is all of the emotions. And we can, of course, grieve and miss and suffer when we lose someone, but we can also see it in this much vaster context. And it can help us heal at the deepest, deepest level because when our soul is imbalanced and when our emotions are imbalanced and we are only seeing the gaping hole, the pain, the suffering, we're believing all these terrible things about ourselves and what it means about us that we have lost this thing or this person, we are going to be so miserable. We are going to be operating in survival emotions. We are going to have a lower consciousness. We are not going to be able to rise to the challenge and see where the energy has been dispersed to. We are not going to be able to lift ourselves out of the pits of grief. And according to David R. Hawkins' scale of consciousness, I think grief or shame is one of the lowest emotional states we can feel and we can resonate in. And yes, we need to experience it because if we do not experience the pain, we cannot experience the joy. But we need to express it, express the actual feeling that we're feeling, and hit the nail on the head of whether it's shock or loss or pain or whether we're believing something that isn't true, that we could have prevented it, and we have guilt and regret and beating ourselves up. We need to actually land on the exact emotion that the loss is bringing out in us. And it will probably be like layers of an onion. And we need to process each one and slowly but surely rise to higher levels of consciousness and higher emotional states so that we can go on to reach our greatest potential in life and not be flawed by the experiences and the losses that we go through. And I would also say that if you're experiencing loss on a smaller scale and you feel like you have this sense of grief and disappointment as you go throughout your day, but you haven't necessarily lost a loved one or something big in your life, I would say that you may be in a constant state of hope and expectation. And if you are able to acknowledge that not everything is going to go your way, not everyone is going to be on the same page as you, whatever it is, and you start to curb some of that disappointment that is happening in a repeated sense, that will also help to elevate your emotions and to not be in a constant state of loss and disappointment. So, as you can see, a lot of emotional mastery occurs when we are going through a loss. A lot of uh, spiritual and consciousness understandings can be drawn out of some of these very, very painful experiences. But if you can see it in this broader context and understand the exact feelings that you're feeling, then loss will be much less of a deeply painful suffering experience. And I would always welcome you if you are struggling with a loss that you cannot get over, or you are having difficulty shifting some of the painful beliefs around it, or if you just cannot move forward from a loss and you are in a constant state of emotional pain. It would be my privilege and my honor to help you in a one-to-one session and do it in the most high frequency, delicate, fragile, sensitive way so that we can alchemize it and shift it and not hold on to whatever you lost as only a negative and to feel less of a deep pain around whatever you may have lost. So, as always, I am sending everyone much love. I know loss is one of the most painful experiences, and I know that it can be neutralized and shifted so that you don't have to carry the burden of it for the rest of your life and you don't have to suffer in those lower emotions for longer than you need to. So please reach out if you need to, and I'm sending you much love. Thank you so much for being here today. If you want to keep hanging out, because I sure do, then head to my Instagram @PhoebeSgram or my website, phoebestewart.com.